everyone. Welcome back to Proudly Asian. I'm your host, Isabel. How is everyone doing this week? Now, this episode actually marks our 4th year of Proudly Asian. 4 years! January 25th, 2022, that's when we released our first ever episode. And it feels kind of unreal and also like it flew by at the same time. So consider this our little birthday party, minus the cake, but with lots of great memories and feels. If you have been following us, you will know that we have officially kicked off season 7 with a brand new episode featuring Hong Kong creative Karina, who is also the creator of Carby the Rice Ball. So please go check it out if you haven't already. As I said in the year-end message, before the end of 2025, I was saying that 2025 was definitely a quieter year for Proudly Asian. It was a year when we ask ourselves what kind of space we want to hold for the global Asian diaspora. We've seen some incredible wins over the years, more visibility, more representation for the community. And at the same time, we're also living in a moment where that progress can feel shaky at times, where things we thought were moving forward don't always stay that way. It's a reminder that the work to advocate for representation isn't done, and that sometimes showing up looks completely different from how we're used to before. So I intentionally slowed down on Proudly Asian, not because it matters any less, but because I wanted to make sure we weren't just adding to the noise. But at some point last year, some of you reached out to say just how much you missed Proudly Asian. And that really stuck with me. It reminds me that maybe in times of uncertainty, sometimes simply showing up and making sure voices are heard still matters. I remember when I spoke with some fellow content creators, they would always say the fastest way to grow is to collaborate with big names. While over the years we have been able to feature and partner with people I used to dream of meeting, the reason I started Proudly Asian was to provide a platform for voices rarely heard, but deserve so much more attention. So if we become a show that only features big names, we're reinforcing the very systemic problem that historically held back marginalized voices. And most of the time, the most popular episodes or episodes our listeners keep talking about aren't exactly the episodes who featured big names only. They love hearing from people who have never even been interviewed before. Those are some of the proudest moments I had working on Proudly Asian, when I could encourage, empower, and earn the trust of those who are not used to telling their stories to share their voices. So if this platform has done anything right over the past 4 years, I hope it's that. But of course, I would love to still feature voices that have significantly contributed to Asian representation worldwide. So instead of only chasing big names, I would love for us to still focus on the stories. Whether it's a big name or someone who's just not used to the limelight, we just want to provide the space for stories worth telling. This is what we want to continue to be for the global Asian diaspora community. So before we get into today's episode, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to everyone who's been listening, sending messages, and sticking with us over the years. And thank you to our guests who trusted this platform with their stories and showed up with so much honesty and generosity. 4 years in, what started as a podcast has now grown into an incredible multimedia platform and community of listeners, guests, and supporters from around the world. There's so much to be proud of, and I'm ready for another year of Proudly Asian with all of you. Thank you for being here, and maybe let's make some noise. Woohoo! And let's get cracking with this anniversary episode. Our tradition usually is walking down the memory lane, but this year I would also like to highlight some lessons I learned from our guests from season 6. Lesson number 1. You can learn to love yourself. So on Proudly Asian, we often touch on the topic of self-love and acceptance. A lot of our guests who are third culture kids or grew up in Asian diaspora families outside Asia found it particularly hard to fit in. And what the founder of Women of Hong Kong, Sarah V, who is a Filipino Hong Konger herself, said in episode 101 during season 6 gets me emotional every single time. She shows us that if there isn't a seat at the table for us, we can create our own table. So many of us grew up believing that belonging had to be granted, that we needed permission, that if we just worked a little harder, assimilated better, stayed quieter, or proved ourselves enough, someone would eventually pull out a chair for us. And starting your own table sometimes just means choosing yourself when no one else does. Sometimes it means creating a community where there was none. And that ties so closely to another theme we return to again and again on Proudly Asian, which is loving yourself, not the polished, Instagram-friendly version of self-love, but the quiet and comfortable kind. The kind where you stop relying on outside sources to tell you that you are enough. And it's okay if you did not start off loving yourself. It's a journey. It's becoming the person who slowly learns to trust themselves, who believes in themselves, who knows deep down that they already have what it takes to become who they want to be.
Being a Filipina in Hong Kong, there's not a lot of room for me. had to drag my chair over to the table that didn't have a seat for me. But I'm proud. I'm proud that I was resilient. I feel like a lot of Filipinos are resilient.
Mm-hmm.
I struggled with my identity, thinking, okay, I'm not local, because people would tell me I don't look local.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, so that means I'm not. But then I'm neither an expat too, because I don't look like your typical expat. So for a lot of years, I just didn't know where Filipinos fit. Where do I fit? Am I supposed to fit? That caused a lot of uncertainty and the lack of confidence. Oh man, the lack of confidence really hits you, because if you lack confidence in a city that is buzzing with opportunity, even if the opportunity hits you in the face, you're going to be like, not worth it. I'm not going to take it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to do it. Who's going to believe me? Who's going to take me seriously? So when you said earlier that you read an interview where I spoke about how I didn't like myself, that was me. I didn't like that version of myself, where I grew up in this city thinking I'm just not good enough and I shouldn't be really in front of people. I should always be behind the scenes. Don't be too loud. Don't ask for too much. So when I said in an interview for the first time, and I don't even know why I had such big balls to say that, I really meant it when I said I didn't like who I was and I was ready to change that. And building Women of Hong Kong really was just proof that if you are unhappy with your position in your life, you have all the power to change that. It's in your hands. So I'm here to prove that it can be done.
Lesson number 2. There is something we need to ditch in 2026. Sticking to Sarah's episode, she also mentioned one of the most unhinged comments she gets often as a female entrepreneur, a single mom, and someone who went through mental health struggles.
You don't look depressed. You don't look like a mom. You don't look like this. You don't look like that. What does any of that even look like?
Exactly.
What does a mom look like? I'm a mom, and then people say you don't look like a mom. Again, harmless statement, but we got to eradicate that from our list of default responses. And you don't look depressed, you might hurt someone that's really mentally going through something difficult. So
it's 2026, everyone. Let's ditch the response of, you don't look like XYZ. I have never understood that reaction when someone is simply introducing themselves or sharing a basic fact about who they are. Why would anybody respond with, but you don't look like this or that? And in Asian cultures, that kind of response could most commonly be about age as well. People would say, you look too young to have done all that. But the truth is, I have done all that, thank you very much. And this kind of comment is usually said by people meeting someone for the first time. You don't know their background, you don't know what they've been through, and yet somehow there's enough confidence to comment on how their life should look based on purely appearance. That's the part that's wild to me. So let's leave that in the past. In 2026, we can do better. We can listen without projecting and respond without reducing someone's identity to what we think they are supposed to look like. Lesson number 3. Kids don't start off being racists. Rather than a lesson, this is more of a reminder. A lot of what we absorb growing up is learn. It's nurture. It's the comments we overhear, the jokes that go unchecked, and stereotypes that get repeated so often, they start to feel normal. And because of that, anyone can make these mistakes. None of us are immune. What matters isn't whether you've ever been culturally insensitive. The chances are most of us have, even ethnic minorities, marginalized groups, even people who have experienced discrimination themselves. They can make all these mistakes. But the real question is what you do next. Are you willing to listen when someone tells you something landed wrong? Or are you willing to unlearn what you've been taught? That's one of the takeaways from our conversation with Hong Kong Pakistani brothers Zaraf and Adam Khan. Growth does not come from pretending we've never made mistakes. It comes from being honest about them, taking responsibility and choosing to learn.
And I definitely believe it's a lot about nurture, you know? And I mean, we can definitely agree, kids can't really be like racist, right?
No.
It's more about what's taught at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I think even in those moments when we face these kind of situations, I think probably the reason why parents didn't really do anything is because the kids probably were too scared. And it makes you wonder like what their home environment was, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because there's a memory that popped in my head. It was you remember this one guy in our building who would always call us a chajai.
I don't remember that.
It was like kind of relatively middle-aged guy.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah. So what I remember in
my
my memory is that he would say these things to us, and we would just laugh at it because we don't know what it means. At that time, we didn't know what it meant, so we just laugh about it. And there was one time we went home, and then we told our dad that he says, there's this guy who says this, and we were just saying it with a laughing face. And then it was at that time that our dad was like, this is not funny. Like, you shouldn't let him say that to you. So that was like, we didn't know what it meant, even for us, because like even though it's derived from a word that we use all the time at home, we didn't really put it together that that's what it meant. So I think that was, I guess, like the first, also the instance where it was like, oh, I guess there are certain things that we can't just be okay with. But no, I think just speaking on that point a little bit, I think also from his perspective, perhaps also he wasn't completely aware that what the meaning of that was, right?
True.
Because then for me, if I had to think about it in hindsight, there were a lot of instances growing up where, I would use certain racial slurs and I didn't even know that they were sort of, today they would probably get me canceled. But back then you're like, you don't know what this word even means.
Yeah.
You're just saying it until somebody tells you that, hey, it's wrong. And then it really depends that, okay, how do you respond to that? Are you going to be it's just a word, I can say whatever I want to say. Who are you to stop me from saying that? Or B, you're like, oh, I didn't know that this was offensive to a group of people, so I'm going to stop using it from now on, right? So it was that kind of scenario. And even though we are an ethnic minority, it doesn't mean that we are pure from making these kind of mistakes.
Lesson number 4. We need to have the space to disagree with each other. One of the moments from our conversation with Hmong American TV anchor Gia Vang that really stayed with me was her reflection on how divided the world feels right now. She talked about how polarized the world is, and we're no longer talking to each other like we used to. People are building echo chambers for themselves. But one reminder we all need is disagreement isn't something to be afraid of. We need to be able to disagree with each other respectfully. Now more than ever, we need people to have the ability to listen and not turn conversations into conflict. We have to be willing to stay in the conversation even when it's uncomfortable.
I think that we are losing more robust and also just conversations in which we can probably find common ground, but we're not having those conversations because we have for so long been like, okay, I'm just going to mic drop everyone around here and then walk away. And we're not actually having the back and forth conversations that we used to have. And so I think I'm really trying hard, even within my own family, relatives, to be open to why they're feeling that way and try to understand where they're coming from and try to understand, okay, we kind of want the same things. We just think that there's a different way to go about getting there. And so, yeah, I think that is also an issue too right now in our country is we're not having those conversations. We're just saying, absolutely, we're putting walls up. I mean, to play on the administration's words, we're putting walls up between people, just saying, I don't want to be friends with them because they think this way. I don't want to, that family member voted for Trump. That family member voted for Biden. I cannot talk to them, And so I think that's really a struggle right now with the climate and the culture that has really been created from the top down.
Halfway through season 6, we created a mini special series called Proudly Asian European to continue our mission to highlight more Asian diaspora experiences around the world. When it comes to the Asian diaspora, a lot of people will tend to think Asians in North America, like Asian Americans or Asians in Canada, but Asian diaspora communities have existed in Europe and in other continents, for example, South America and Africa for generations. Because their populations are usually smaller and more scattered, there's actually very limited representation in their local media. So I'm glad that we were able to bring this mini-series to Proudly Asian because it took such a long time to book these guests, not because they don't exist, but simply because culturally, I think Asians in Europe tend to be a bit less outspoken and don't feel as confident telling their stories in English because their native languages would be one of the European languages. So for this mini-series, I was able to bring in guests from Norway, France, Netherlands, and Germany, starting off with a German-born Lao podcaster, Kulap, who summarized the experience of being Asian in Europe so perfectly.
Of course, when they see me, then they think, oh no, you're not German, you're not from here, obviously. But when I tell them I'm from Laos, then there's another question coming.
Yeah, because it's not exactly true, right?
Exactly. Yeah. My parents are from Laos. They came to Germany and then, but you're not German, right? Like you're not from Germany. I was born and raised in Germany. Yeah, but my parents, and then like, yeah, but you're not German. Like you're not German. And yeah.
We also had the pleasure to speak with Norwegian Chinese content creator Elin. What does it mean to be proudly Norwegian Chinese to you?
It means embracing both sides and not necessarily being half one or half the other, but just being 100% of both, and just being proud of that and not holding back on either sides, I guess.
And here comes lesson number 5 that I learned from the Proudly Asian European mini-series, which is stepping beyond familiar spaces allows us to find our people and become who we are still growing into. So during the mini-series, we also had French-Vietnamese Comorian dancer Anisha Tai stop by our studio, and the conversation with her was such a powerful reminder that there's always more out there beyond our own little world, our own little bubble. She also reminded us that identity isn't fixed. It keeps changing and evolving. A lot of people grow up believing that where we're born or where we were raised defines who we are. But that's an overly simplified way of thinking about identity.
If I didn't travel, I think I would still have that mentality of, oh, I'm just French and I'm just going to accept my fate. But no, there's more. But also, through the discussions that you have, through the people that you meet along your journey, I think that really impacts you, the way you think. So I would say there's your heritage, like coming from your bloodline, but there's also the influence of your environment, the friends that you have. So that's what we mentioned about like third culture kid. I feel like it's much more than just your ethnicity and the country you live and you were born and raised. It's a whole global influence on you, I would say.
It's like the places that you've lived, the people that you hang out with.
100%.
Like somehow you just adopt the way that they communicate, and it's amazing. Like identities can just keep on changing, and it just
it's growing
exponentially.
It's very fluid. That's what I'm saying. We're just like fishes in the seas, and we're just exploring and taking what is good for us and growing and shaping ourselves in a way that, it's beautiful. We're constantly changing and evolving.
And if you find yourself around people who don't quite understand you yet, it doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with you. It may simply mean they haven't seen what you've seen or experienced what you have.
People who are used to being around international kids, just everyone's international. I think it's nothing new when you're in an international school. I think after you move out of that international school space, that's when people start to be a bit like, oh, I don't really understand like where you're from, or like if you're from Hong Kong, like why do you not look Chinese? Those kind of questions start coming when you move outside of that little expat international bubble.
In 2025, other than the podcast, we also continued our video series, Proudly Asian Food, where we had the pleasure of trying out Tibetan food in Hong Kong, which the reels that we produced, they became viral. And also we had the pleasure of checking out a halal dim sum spot with our previous guest, Calville. And in terms of widening the scope of the stories we tell about marginalized communities, I'm also quite glad that we were able to have Jason Bourne, who is a descendant of indigenous Taiwanese, share his experience reconnecting with his roots.
And then as far as my indigenous status, being kind of part of my official Taiwanese citizenship, that was kind of a legal recognition of my identity that was certainly meaningful, and I felt definitely compelled to do so. But that recognition, I think, only really scratches the surface of what it means to be indigenous in what's really a colonial system. The designation of my indigenous status is all part of like a very formal Republic of China document. So it's all still within a very kind of colonial structure and, recognition and system, but it still has meaning, and it's a formality that I wanted to fulfill. And I had dinner with kind of my extended family right after I got my official ID card. And they're super excited, and they're passing it around and looking at it, making fun of my picture, but then also asking like, oh, did you apply for indigenous status? And I said, of course, yes. I would never not want to. And so it was a way, I think, to feel closer to that side of my family at the same time. And so besides sharing bloodlines and ancestry and family bond, we also now share citizenship too, which isn't something that I could say before.
And we also had the privilege of inviting Iman, a Cape Malay teacher from Cape Town, onto Proudly Asian. It was actually her first time ever sharing her story so openly on a public platform. I remember she told me she prepared so much ahead of time. Like, she showed me there were pages of notes. And it wasn't because she was nervous about being on a podcast, but because she knew just how rare it was to have the chance to put a spotlight on the Cape Malay community. And she said that not many people know about her community. So she wanted to make sure she was sharing the right information and representing her people accurately. And she even got her family involved. She asked them to share context, help fact check details, and make sure what she was about to share on the episode would reflect the collective memory and lived experience, not just her own perspective. And that moment was kind of powerful to me because it's a reminder of why Proudly Asian exists in the first place. So many marginalized communities have never been given the space to tell their own stories. And when they are spoken about, or when they finally get the chance to share their stories, it's often through someone else's lens, shaped by assumptions, biases, or editorial decisions driven by convenience or commercial priorities rather than care. That's why it's so important to me to create a space where people can tell their own stories in their own words and on their own terms.
The challenging part is explaining to people who don't understand, because living abroad, obviously people just assume you're from a certain place. But then when you say, oh, I'm from South Africa, and they just look at you like,
but you're not black.
You're not black or you're not white. If they've seen a white South African, right? It's either or, but they don't see people who look like me, so they're confused. And then, the case in South Korea was that there was a language barrier, so it was also difficult for me to explain to them, like I would just say, oh, lots of people look like me. I would just kind of explain like that. So that was more of the challenge, explaining your identity to someone who doesn't understand, and especially because South Korea is more homogenous community, right, or country, so it's even more challenging to understand something as diverse as a country called the Rainbow Nation. Actually, we're called the Rainbow Nation because of the mix of people. So,
lesson number 6: being soft is a sign of strength. We had a wholesome conversation with Indian-born and Vietnam-raised sustainability professional Shruti about embracing being empathetic. Being able to choose the soft approach in hard situations is a sign of strength and resilience, because it often takes going through things that could have hardened you to develop the ability to approach the world with empathy. And at the same time, we also don't have to fight every piece of nonsense that comes our way. Some battles are simply not worth it. And not everything deserves your energy, your reaction, or your time. Sometimes choosing peace looks like letting things be, not overthinking it, not replaying it in your own head, not dragging something on longer than it needs to be.
I feel like people might assume being wholesome is being naive. I don't think so. I think being wholesome, it's a choice. As Isabel said so well, it's a choice to be positive about a situation and knowing that you have a little bit of control over how the outcome is and like just switching it. I mean, for me, that is, I like to keep my close circle relatively small, which is weird because I do have a lot of close friends throughout my life. I've just collected a lot of like close friends like Pokemon, and they all live in different parts of the world. So it's all on like Zoom calls. But like my close friends are people that I genuinely feel very connected to on one thing or another. And I do feel that sense of wholesomeness when I'm talking to them. It's always insightful. It's always positive. We share our negative situations, but then we always come out with like a silver lining lesson from that. And I make that a habit for sure. Like any bad situation that I'm in, regardless of how hurt I am, what is the lesson that I'm taking away? I'm not okay if a situation doesn't have a lesson. I will take the lesson.
Very good mindset. Like you're not going to go through that for no reason, right?
Yeah, I will have a lesson out of it. I will make a lesson out of it one way or another.
Lesson 7. Cultural in-betweenness can be a leadership superpower. We also recorded a really meaningful conversation during World Mental Health Day, Dyslexia Awareness Month, and ADHD Awareness Month in October with Japanese HR leader and neuro-inclusion advocate Satomi, who was diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia in adulthood. We spoke to her about what it's like living and working across cultures and what it actually takes to create a workplace that's inclusive. And that conversation basically reframed something many of us who grew up in multicultural settings have struggled with: the feeling of not quite fitting in anywhere, and how we should represent or how we should show up ourselves in the workplace eventually. And growing up in between cultures, a lot of us basically carry this quiet sense of helplessness. We're not fully one thing or the other. We might be Asian, but shaped by Western education and norms. And when we enter the workforce, especially in multinational settings, we often feel stuck in limbo. Do we lean into being more Asian or more Western? But the episode with Satomi reminded us that this in-between space can actually be a strength. Cultural awareness, adaptability, and the ability to navigate different norms are increasingly essential leadership skills. So not fitting in perfectly can sometimes be a superpower.
Like, I made so many mistakes just trying to be adapting, the textbook styles of like Western leaderships that didn't quite fit. And also just trying to figure out who am I in this game? And who do I want to be known as? Because of my Japanese upbringing and a background that gave me the opportunity to be able to read the room instead of being individualistic in Europe. So I find myself not speaking up in a meeting where that I should have been, because that I was waiting for the cue, or I was waiting to collect those, the feedbacks from everyone. And I think that's also like one of my struggle, that I would say that because of that, I have grew up and lived in different multicultural contexts. So I can be quite adaptable, and I call myself as culture chameleon. But at the same time, because of that I do admit that I lose my own belief, values, and the leadership styles and my own voices. But I would say that, and this is something that is my based on perspectives, a lot of Asian global leaders, in my opinions, that we provide a lot of future leadership skills that is needed in this world more than ever. And that means the ability to be able to read a room, and also emotional intelligence, listen to people, and to bring the people together collectively.
For those of you who have been with us since the very first season, you might remember Hong Kong wellness practitioner and sound healer Yinki, who hosted a beautiful sound healing session for us during her episode. And since then, she's been on an exciting new journey in London. She has moved to a new city to pursue a music career, and she recently released her very first single, Runaway. The song speaks to survival, choosing oneself, and the courage to run toward truth. So please enjoy this beautiful song.
When I first heard your heartbeat, all I could feel was doom. Metal fingers weaving a broken loom. I tried to make it work, but this just led to a heart of hurt. I cried for help, got angry shouts. Now I know it's time to get out. Run away from you. least out my words and acts. My nervous system's freaking out. At least my eyes are open now.
What a lovely tune. And honestly, moments like this make me so happy. They remind me that the Proudly Asian community is filled with so much talent and that so many of our past guests continue to evolve, explore new careers, take creative risks, and step into new versions of themselves. And that's it for this anniversary episode. Make sure you follow us on social media. We are on Instagram with exclusive content over there, so make sure you check us out on Instagram at proudly.asian. We're also on YouTube. Don't forget to tune in to our latest episode. We've just launched our season 7 a couple weeks ago. Just search Proudly Asian Podcast and you'll be able to find us. And finally, thank you for staying with us for another year, for listening, for sharing, and for growing alongside Proudly Asian. Before we go, I'd like to leave you with one final soundbite from season 6.
There's so many different types of Asians. It's not just one type at all. Like, it's so many countries, so many ethnicities and everything else. I think to be proudly Asian, at least from my view, is to understand as much as you can about your roots. Just understand your roots, understand where you come from, understand why you are the way you are, but don't let that hold you back. Don't let certain value systems that may not be with the current times hold you back from what you want to do. Don't let certain biases make you feel your own restrictions. As long as you think, it works for you, go for it, and do things that you're passionate about, that you think are worth your while. Don't let your past or your roots hold you back, but also acknowledge it and don't leave it behind, because that is a part of you.
That's it for this episode of Proudly Asian. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at proudly.asian for more content. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review on wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in and signing off for now. I'm Isabel Wong.